Okay, just to start off, I don't plan on doing too many videos like this. And honestly, I'm not even a big fan of these types of videos overall. Though if you are, that's absolutely fine. They're just normally not my personal cup of tea. However, in this case I wanted to speak my thoughts and thus decided to make a short video throwing in my 2 cents on this debate. And obviously there will be some very minor spoilers for the Book of Boba Fett in this video. So in case you don't want absolutely anything ruined, you should probably come back to this video another day. Alright, so let's get into it. Now, the main topic I want to debate here is a question that's come up since the first episode of the show aired, which is, was Jabba the Hutt lying about the fate of those who fall into the Sarlacc pit? Because while he claimed that those who fall in would have to endure endless agony for 1,000 years while being digested, the Book of Boba Fett shows the title character nearly suffocating in its stomach before finding a dead, partially digested stormtrooper and using his oxygen hose in order to stay conscious long enough to escape. So in the end, I guess the real question here boils down to, is that brief scene enough to disprove Jabba's claims in Return of the Jedi? Well, I think there's a couple of answers to that question, mainly because of how short the scene is. Which is something people have to keep in mind. They didn't dedicate an entire episode to showing what he was doing down in the pit. You can only get so much context from a 2-minute scene. However, while I can understand why some people would believe that Jabba was lying or exaggerating based off what's seen in that scene, personally I don't think he was. In my opinion, I don't think that scene is enough to prove Jabba was wrong, for reasons I'm going to explain right now. Now, first off, I know many animal experts have said on many occasions that an animal like the Sarlacc that keeps its prey alive for an extended period of time would never exist in real life. But when has Star Wars ever followed real life all that closely? Besides, we do have some extremely bizarre things out there already. So is anything ever honestly really that impossible in the animal kingdom? But setting that aside, there's also the fact that in the old Star Wars expanded universe, Jabba the Hutt was absolutely right. Sarlaccs were depicted as keeping their prey alive and not only in constant physical pain, but mental pain as well for close to a millennium. It would perform something similar to a mind meld from Star Trek on them, making victims experience memories from previous victims or even from the Sarlacc itself. And it was also somewhat aware of what it was doing, and even took pleasure in the torture it inflicted on them. So, in other words, the Sarlacc's stomach was really no different than a torture chamber from the Middle Ages, only a million times worse. It was something you did not mess with or go anywhere near unless you had a long, extremely drawn out, and painful death wish. And now you're probably thinking, yes, all of that is true, but that's not canon anymore. So what does that prove? Well, nothing, I guess, except that's how they used to be depicted, and sometimes the new canon has been known to borrow stuff from the old one, so I just wanted to throw that out there. Because after all, there's nothing in the series that even remotely implies Jabba was wrong or that the Sarlacc's any different from how they were in the old expanded universe. It even waits and tries to attack Boba Fett and his ship at one point, which could even imply it has the level of self-awareness the old canon explicitly stated it to have. But again, to be completely fair, all of that is just speculation and doesn't prove much. However, even if we remove everything else and just look at the scene as is, I still say it's entirely possible Jabba could have been telling the truth. Because even though Boba Fett is suffocating in there, he's also still mobile and can walk around more or less as he pleases. Now, in order for it to digest him, no matter what, it would have to wrap him up, secure him, and keep him still, just like the stormtrooper you see later in the scene. And it's entirely possible that it would start feeding him oxygen once it did so, similar to the facehugger in Alien, which was stated on multiple occasions to have been feeding their victims oxygen. And considering this hadn't happened to him by the time we see him in the flashback, this could imply that he was refusing to allow himself to be wrapped up, which in turn may very well be why he's near death when you see him in there. He may have been fighting off the Sarlacc for hours until his suit ran out of air, at which point he would have died because the stomach itself doesn't have much oxygen and the Sarlacc wouldn't be able to give him any. Now, I know that's not the most concrete argument ever, but I still say it's one that actually makes a lot of sense when you stop and think about it, and would line up with Jabba's claims in Return of the Jedi. And then there's the dead stormtrooper. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is, we don't know anything about him or how he ended up in the pit. For all we know, he could have been dead before he even fell in there, or could have seriously injured himself trying to avoid being eaten and then died of his injuries, or got hurt, fell into the pit, and then died due to a lack of medical treatment. Or he could have even somehow killed himself at some point after he fell in there to finally escape the never-ending torture. Frankly, there's 100 different ways he could have ended up dead, and that isn't the direct result of the Sarlacc's lack of oxygen or method of digestion. All we do know about the stormtrooper is that he fell in there, died, and whatever contained his air supply hadn't been ruptured. And all the scenarios I just mentioned could easily line up with the state he's in. So even looking at just that one scene with nothing else to go on but what Jabba said in Return of the Jedi, I believe it's still entirely possible that he was telling the truth, and that Boba Fett's escape just doesn't show direct evidence of it. But at the same time, like I said before, I know my arguments aren't the most concrete ones, and you could probably even find a few holes in them. And if you just hate them outright and believe Jabba was lying, that's fine. Because I'm not gonna lie, he definitely would be the type to do something like that. But at the same time, another thing to consider is that Luke had been living on Tatooine almost his whole life, and most likely had heard of the Sarlacc before. And the fact that he seems to take Jabba's words at face value may be another indicator that it wasn't an exaggeration on his part. But even I know that's not much to go on, since even if he knew he was lying, there could be many reasons why he didn't call him out on it. Basically, my point is, I know it doesn't really matter if Jabba was lying or not, but I still wanted to share my opinion on the subject, mainly because it's one most people don't seem to consider. That he could have very well been telling the truth, but that the writers didn't go out of their way to show it because they wanted to depict what they felt was the most logical way he could have escaped. And not to mention, there's nothing in the scene that outright contradicts his statement, so the whole thing is really left up to the audience's interpretation at this point. And personally, and remember, you don't have to agree with me here, I just don't think he was lying about it, and that the scene in and of itself doesn't prove that he was. Okay, that's all I have to say on that. And sorry if this video feels weird or different from my other videos, but like I said, I just wanted to get my opinion out there on this topic, and don't plan on doing too many like this unless you guys really like them. But either way, now it's your turn to tell me. Do you think Jabba the Hutt was lying about the Sarlacc in Return of the Jedi, or do you believe he was telling the truth? Please feel free to let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching. I always very much appreciate it, and I hope to see you all next time.